So I wanted to start the session by telling a little story, because we like to start everything with a story. It started in April last year when a freak flood hit the city of Dubai. Christopher Wiley, better known as the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, was supposed to be meeting me in Europe. We were working on a new project together. But he found himself trapped in Dubai as a storm ravaged the desert city. Trapped alongside him were thousands of tech bros, Silicon Valley, venture capitalists, crypto millionaires, TikTok influencers, and biohackers. And there was nothing to do but wait out the storm and party. And Chris and I FaceTimed through it.
You're being pummeled with water as you're wading through knee-deep water. People are screaming everywhere. And then what do all these bros do? They organize a party. It's like the world is collapsing outside, and yet you go inside, and it's like billionaires and centimillionaires having a party. Can't get electricity? That's fine, we bought a generator. It's nuts. And I feel like Dubai right now is a microcosm of the world. The world is collapsing outside, and then people are partying.
I was at a journalism conference at the time, and every few hours my phone was pinging with messages and voice notes from Chris, sending dispatches from the middle of these parties.
Okay, so I don't know if you can hear me. I'm in the toilet at this event, and it's interesting because people here, they're talking about longevity, how to live, if not for a long time, how to live forever, but also prepping, how to prepare for when people revolt and when society gets completely undermined. And the thing that I think about is you have, in another part of the world, a bunch of journalists talking about how to save democracy. And here you've got a bunch of tech guys, tech bros, thinking about how to live past democracy and survive.
You might remember Chris as that guy with pink hair who blew the whistle on Cambridge Analytica in 2018. He kickstarted a massive controversy about what Facebook was doing with our data. And that voice note that Chris sent me was kind of the beginning of a year-long investigation and mad journey that we went on together that resulted in a podcast called Captured. We wanted to understand what was really going on inside the tech world, how we're all being captured by big tech, and how we can fight back. So, of course, we started by going to Silicon Valley, the land of the true believers. And San Francisco is a pretty mind-blowing place. We met this dog there on our first day, but that was kind of only the beginning of the madness. And before we go to San Francisco, and I will take you there, I want to take you first to a place far away from San Francisco, 15,000 miles away from Silicon Valley, to the informal settlements in Kenya. This is where we found the people who play an invisible but crucial part in the development of AI. Nairobi's poorest neighborhoods are home to armies of click workers who relentlessly correct and train AI models until those models finally learn something. This is where we met Mercy Chimwani. She lives with her family in this half-finished house on the outskirts of Nairobi. Inside, there's mud beneath our feet. The unfinished stairs lead up to a gaping hole where you can see the rain clouds above. So when it rains, water comes straight down and runs right through the house.
This is like the sitting, at the same time the bedroom.
So how many sleep in here?
My sister, my 2 kids, and my mom. We have 2 beds. Then the kids, they sleep on one bed, my mom and my sister, and then me, I usually sleep here. Yeah.
And you worked for, who did you work for?
Meta.
Mercy, who lives in this half-built house sharing a room with 4 other people, used to be a Meta employee. She was a content moderator. It was her job to look at the most horrific images on the internet so that you and I don't have to look at them. She was training Meta's AI systems to automatically filter out that content for us. And she was so traumatized by what she saw that she couldn't sleep. For this, she was paid about $1 an hour.
They're telling you they will pay you a little bit higher compared to what you were earning before. And then you are like, oh no, here it is. You could see people committing suicide live. I also saw a video of a very young kid being raped live, and you're here, you have to watch this content. You have kids, you are thinking about them, and here you are at work. You have to deal with that content. You have to remove it from the platform. So you can imagine all that piling in within one person, how hard it is.
Now in Kenya, you meet people like Mercy who were training social media algorithms, but you also meet people who were training ChatGPT on how to avoid giving answers that would include things like child abuse or rape. And the way that the people we met had to do that was to spend hour after hour reading the most vile material you can imagine and telling ChatGPT this collection of words equals child abuse, this collection of words equals rape. This is the sausage factory that makes artificial intelligence. Every major tech company does this, and they don't want you to know about it. They make everyone sign non-disclosure agreements to try to stop them from talking about what they do and how they're treated.
They were like, no, just that you have signed, just know from today henceforth you are not supposed to mention to anyone the kind of job you are doing, the nature of job that you are doing.
We're told to believe that AI is almost like a magic trick, one that will seamlessly solve all of our problems. But we're supposed to look away from the fact that some of the poorest and most vulnerable people in the world are being traumatized in the name of making our lives more convenient. And if you go to San Francisco, you'll get a sense of what that convenience looks like. You glide from your self-driven car to your tech campus, and then you're driven home to your temperature-controlled smart house. We went to one enormous upmarket tech bro frat house called the Artificial General Intelligence House, or AGI house for short. And one Saturday, we went to a 50-man hackathon, and they were, pretty much all men. We took our shoes off at the door, like everyone else, and we went in to meet machine learning CEOs and humanoid robot developers. They talk about a future with artificial intelligence as a utopia, a paradise where we'll never have to work, where suffering will end and robots will do everything for us. This is me and Chris with the founder of AGI House, this guy called Jeremy Nixon. And Jeremy told us what he's most excited about when it comes to AI: access to all human knowledge within our own brains.
So say in the next decade, we invent brain-computer interfaces, and I can basically have read and write access from my neurons, direct from, say, a neural network.
So putting stuff into your head as well.
Yeah, so you could have all of the knowledge that GPT-4 has about a subject, like real-time, on-the-fly, comprehensive knowledge of everything that you're interacting with.
If, like me, that went completely over your head, Jeremy's basically saying that he wants to install artificial intelligence into every human brain, or at least every human that can afford it. His dream is never to have to Google anything, because that's an inconvenient chore, and it will just be easier if we could just access all of that information through a chip in our heads. We also met one of Jeremy's roommates, a guy called Kyle Morris. He's part of a growing trend in Silicon Valley of people who want to live forever.
By the time I'm 60, I plan on kind of retrofitting my body with different parts and replacing organs, limbs. I want to assume that there will be continued progress, and then kind of bank my life around that.
Kyle's working on the theory that future advances in technology will allow him to become immortal, and he's trying to slow down the aging process as much as he can so that he can be in the best possible position to take advantage of future technological progress. Part of what he's doing is taking massive amounts of dietary supplements, and he showed me his daily routine. So what have we got here?
It's basically a whole set of like supplements that help with longevity and energy. The metrics I optimize for like mental energy, clarity, decision making. Because the way I see it is any given day, my job is effectively to make 2 or 3 decisions and then work a number of hours.
So you're kind of optimizing for these specific set of goals? Like
Yeah. I basically have brain with limbs. The brain is the valuable part, the rest is kind of undifferentiated.
So this one's called L-tyrosine, and it says neurotransmitter support, healthy glandular function, supports mental alertness. How old are you?
I'm 28, just turned 28.
And you want to stay 28, preferably?
Yeah, ideally, like, I want to be alive long enough that I can preserve myself and I'm not past an age where I'm unable to use the technology that will allow me to live forever.
If you're like Kyle and Jeremy and you believe AI is going to build us this fabulous future, giving us access to godlike levels of intelligence and the possibility of living forever, it's crucial that you push ahead with the AI revolution and don't get bogged down by questions about accountability or, God forbid, regulation. During our time in Silicon Valley, we went to barbecues in the heart of Palo Alto and talked to investors and tech evangelists who believe that we have to move as fast as possible to be world leaders in AI, or we risk losing out to countries like China. We got talking to this tech investor, a former chief technology officer for a bunch of huge companies. His name is Alan Bain.
We have to be worried about people are going to over-regulate it. Europe is the worst, to be honest with you. Let's look at how we can benefit the society and how this can help lead the world, as opposed to trying to hold it back.
Some people might say that like the reason we have democratically elected governments is so that they can put controls on things, so that they can keep us safe, and ultimately they should be the ones deciding whether we regulate, not the people in this barbecue.
You sound like you're from Sweden. I'm sorry, that's social democracy. That is not what we are here in the US. This country is based on a constitution. We're not based on everybody being equal and holding people back. No, we're not in Sweden.
We're an American barbecue.
Yes.
So, how should we think about AI? How should we live with it? How can we take back control over a future that feels like it's being decided for us by a handful of extraordinarily powerful people? I want to welcome 2 people to the stage to join me. Carissa Véliz, philosopher and author of Privacy is Power, and Adio-Adet Dinika, a researcher and activist at the Distributed AI Research Institute, and we'll get into it. Thank you. Thank you both so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you here. I guess I'm curious what you both think about that presentation and what you think about that story. Both of you have worked around ethics and AI and thinking about how, what the future is going to look like for all of us and what choices we have in that future. But also, as I mentioned, there feels like there's this pitch in Silicon Valley right now that the future that they're building for us is inevitable and that we don't have a choice in the matter, that we can just follow in their lead and they will make all the decisions for us, and we just have to trust in the tech companies that they have, our best interests at heart. So I wanted to ask you, and I think also the other thing I was thinking about was that it feels like at the moment we have this blind spot around AI, but also around bigger issues of data and privacy. We all have these smartphones, and we don't necessarily think a lot about what's going on behind the scenes. And so I guess for you, Adio, I wanted to start with you, because I know you've been to Kenya, and you've been to a lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and you've seen the making of the machine. And what does that look like for you? And what do you think we have a blind spot here? Do you think we're not really thinking about, how do you think we're thinking about AI right now? Are we thinking about it in the right way?
Normally when I hold a mic, I am not sure how to hold it properly, because I'm not sure whether to hold it like a speaker or like a rapper. So I hope this is not a rap session. So I loved a lot of what you said, particularly when you were talking about your experience with Kenya when you spoke to the people. And there's an underlying thing that I think you mentioned people having a blind spot, and many people don't know about the workers that are in the different parts of the global majority. The reason that it's not by accident, it's actually intentional. Because the more you don't know about what lies on the surface, the more you think this technology is artificial and intelligent. But from what I've seen, it's neither artificial nor intelligent, because it is powered by the suffering of actual human beings. When you know that when you're talking to your AI girlfriend or boyfriend, you're actually talking to a young man or young woman in the slums of Nairobi, Kenya, I think it changes the whole dynamic of how you look at technology. So there's this need that human beings have to believe in a higher power. And for me, I mean, we have seen religion all over the world, right? And it's like we are also viewing AI with this similar religious fervor, where we think of AI as a god. And I find that very sad, because it's only human beings who create a system that imitates or mimics them and calls it intelligent. Like, what the hell is that?
I mean, Carissa, your work, you wrote this incredible book in 2020, which I recommend everyone reads if you haven't already. It's called Privacy is Power. And what I would say is it's almost a handbook of, about how to take care of your privacy, and also an instructional manual for why you should care about it. And I think you mentioned in your book that, I think you said something like, when you first started researching the book, people had a blind spot about their privacy. People said that the age of privacy was over. And you wrote that book in 2020, and you were so concerned about people pouring their innermost thoughts into, for example, into search engines, because those give you glimpses of what we're thinking about, right? We're feeding glimpses of our worries and our concerns into Google every day by Googling, and that was in 2020. And now people are pouring entire therapy sessions into ChatGPT. So do we have a blind spot here? From your perspective, what is, in society now, what is our blind spot when it comes to technology and this kind of tech?
I think in general, we're buying the wrong narratives. People seem to think that tech is very successful because it creates these flashy gadgets, and that's just part of the story. Really, what they're genius at is the narratives. And that offends me as a writer, because we're losing here. And something to say is, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, but thank you to everyone here who's a journalist. I am so grateful for your job, and it's just getting more and more important. Because without the other side of the narrative, without you telling us about these nutcases who clearly are not trustworthy, or even leaving them with a plant, let alone humanity, we would be much more blind. We already are quite blind. And yes, I think one of the cardinal sin of digital technology is robbing us of privacy. Because even though it can seem something very abstract, really it's about power. And the practical question that we're asking every time we look at our phones, every time we rely on the digital, is how much surveillance can democracy take? And I don't want to find out the answer to that question. Surveillance leads to control, and control leads to a loss of freedom. And it's not a coincidence that authoritarian regimes have had very impressive police states. And it's not a coincidence that we are seeing the erosion of democracy, both in the number of democratic countries and the quality of democracy within democratic countries, at the same time as the rise of digital tech. Code is authoritarian. It tells you what to do. You can't argue with it. You can't even sue it.
What did you think about this idea of this magic trick of technology? Even every time we interact with ChatGPT, for example, the way that it talks to us, the way that it's designed, some of the AI apps even have kind of like a typing. It looks like they're typing. It looks like there's someone there. It makes us feel like we're talking with a human. The way that you have to almost train it if you don't want it to talk like a robot, because it wants to talk like a human to you, and it makes us feel like people have already fallen in love with chatbots, things like that. It makes us feel like it's holding us under its spell. I mean, and what do you think about this idea? How can we detangle this idea that we're kind of creating these human connections with this technology that is ultimately sucking all of our innermost thoughts away? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's designed to be an impersonator. It's designed to be misleading. It's designed to hijack our empathic responses. And that is irresponsible and unethical. And it's all bullshit. And trust me, this is a technical term. I'm not just losing my temper. So Harry Frankfurt has this term about, he says that for democracy, bullshit is much more dangerous than lies, because the truth teller and the liar are playing the same game, opposite side of the court, but same game. The bullshitter doesn't care about truth at all. And that's exactly what large language models are. They're not truth tracking. They don't depend on, or they don't base their answers on empirical evidence. They just say whatever is most plausible, whatever will hook us to them. And that makes them incredibly dangerous because they say false things that are very, very plausible and that sound like human beings and sound empathic. And that's bullshit empathy.
How do you feel about it, Adio?
Yeah, I actually want to jump on what you said about the truth teller and the liar, and that the bullshit does not care. And that is the same thing with these language models, because they are what are called stochastic parrots. So they basically just guess the next plausible word. And the fact that we look at that and think of that as intelligence or as a smart system, because we are looking for easy answers. It's sad that when I'm teaching in my classes and I give my students readings, I realize that half of the class does not do any readings. And now, when I'm on Twitter, I feel like I'm in an insane asylum, because the number of people who are saying, Grok, summarize this. Grok, what is this? And for me, that represents a very shaky or a very sad degeneration of our thinking abilities, because somehow we now trust this system because it's all-knowing, and whatever Grok says, we embrace. And I find that to be rather sad, because these systems, remember, they are not neutral. They are built to serve a particular purpose. And I think I want to sort of digress a bit, but dig into the whole philosophy underpinning the development of these systems. What Timnit Gebru and Emil Torres described as the test-grill bundle. So I'm sure you've heard terms like transhumanism, effective altruism, long-termism, which you mentioned in your presentation when we were talking about living forever. And when we look deeper within these systems, I think this is where we really get to the bottom of why there is something fundamentally wrong with us just openly embracing these systems. Because there is a philosophy. The tech bros or the oligarchy have a particular agenda, which is to live forever. But when they say want to live forever, who is we? Am I as a black man included? Are you as a woman included? Because when you look at transhumanism and all these this bundle of philosophies, they have a particular group of people that they consider to be fully human. So when you are embracing ChatGPT, when you're embracing whatever large language model, understand or ask yourself, does it consider you as human? The same way it treats the Kenyan workers that Isobel spoke to, the same way it treats immigrants in Germany, immigrants in Venezuela, refugees in Syria. Who are the ones who are training these systems? Are they considered as human beings? Are they worthy of these developments that we want to do? Because we speak of ChatGPT, of these large language models, or of AI doing amazing things. But amazing for who? Because any future that takes a particular group of people and puts it above, and then everyone else is forgotten, that for me sounds very familiar. I think I've heard this story before, but I'll talk about that later. Let me give the mic back.
Well, I think it was interesting when I went to Silicon Valley, when I was hanging out in those kinds of spaces, they did talk about that, about who is this technology really for. One person that we met, he was an engineer who was very interested in living forever, very interested in seeing how the story of AI and superintelligence was going to play out. He talked about it as if it was a sci-fi trilogy. He said, we're at the end of the second book in the trilogy. I want to get to the third book. Even if we all die, I'd like to see what happens. I want to be there. And we also talked about, who this technology was for. And he said, I see in the future there'll be some kind of societal disconnect. There'll be a societal divide between people who can live for, say, 800 years and people who can live only for 50 years. Or, maybe not everyone will have access to super intelligence in their brain, or maybe some people won't want to have it. And then there'll be, a societal divide between people who have this access to higher levels of intelligence and people who don't. So this is what people are talking about in Silicon Valley, and they very much think about, who this technology is being designed for. Not necessarily in a way that's guided by ethics, but just probably in a way that's guided by market. I mean, I don't know, how are you feeling about you're both feeling about, the day after tomorrow, the future right now, because I think, Carissa, you said in your book, we have a choice right now. We can go forward into two worlds. Two worlds are available to us, and everyone in Silicon Valley is talking about the future. And I wondered what you two think about the futures that we're facing. Maybe one of you can be the pessimist and one of you can be the optimist. You can choose between you.
I'm definitely not the optimist.
I'll be the optimist. Somebody has to do it.
Okay, let's have the optimist first.
I thought the optimist was the last word. Okay, I'll do my best. So I'm not saying this is gonna happen. I'm saying it's possible. And the future is unwritten. And it's partly up to us. So a lot of the times, because I work on privacy, people ask me, what's the future of privacy? And my answer is always, you tell me. Are you going to use Signal? Are you going to use Proton Mail? Are you going to protect our privacy? Because it depends on us as a community. And one of the bright things about AI is how shoddy it is. I mean, maybe it's just me, but it fails me all the time. And it's really glitchy, it's authoritarian, it surveils me. I think a few years ago, I had to make an effort not to look at my phone. But today, I look for opportunities, like going to the cinema, or in which I don't look at my phone, and it's such a pleasure. So here's the optimistic view. Everything that matters is analog. Life is analog. Your body is analog, and it's always going to be analog. The water you drink and the food you eat, and your personal relationships, and your house, and your favorite coffee shop, and your favorite pub, and a book. Everything that matters is analog. And the digital is but a ghost of the analog. They sell us the idea that it's cutting edge, but cutting edge just means that you're the guinea pig, that it's not tried and tested. There is no technology more magical, more robust, cheaper, more reliable than a paper book. It's cheap, it's portable, you don't have to charge it, it cannot be hacked, it's not surveilling you, it doesn't ask anything of you, and it's always a friend. It allows you to meet people from around the world, from different times. And if you compare that to a Kindle, really? You have to charge it? You take it to the beach and it doesn't work anymore? It gets hacked, it's surveilling you all the time, it's tracking how fast you read, it's judging you, it's sharing that data. And if you think about that analogy, if you're in a hospital or in a bank, which technology do you trust? Go for the paper book. And I think these boys, they're really just boys playing God. They forget about what matters. They forget about how everything digital depends on the analog, on minerals, and energy, and chunky stuff that you can touch. And so I completely agree with Oliver that the important thing here is not to be a naive optimist, is to be an optimist of the will. This is the time to step up, because the stakes could not be higher, and our way of life and democracy is at stake. And I'm tired of the utilitarian view, who tries to make a calculation of, yeah, but is it worth it? It's the right thing to do, and there's nothing else to it. You do it because you want to be on the right side of history, and there are battles that need to be fought, no matter whether we win or we lose, because this is our duty, our civic duty, to be friends, to talk to one another, to have relationships with our MPs, with our journalists, with our neighbors. And it's up to us, no one else.
Apparently, I was supposed to be on the opposite side, but I found myself nodding a lot as you're talking. But I think let me stick to my script, right, as the pessimist here. So my pessimism really is born out of being a student of history. So, every time I read about AI, or I investigate, or I travel to different countries where AI is made, not Silicon Valley, I always have a feeling of deja vu. You know that feeling when you're watching something and you're like, damn, I've seen this shit before. So let me tell you a very short story. I was in Japan doing a presentation, and I was talking about what is called digital colonialism. And a white man in the crowd said to me, I think you're misusing the term colonialism. I don't think you understand it. So I'm from Zimbabwe and I speak English. And I don't understand colonialism. So anyway, my story really is about colonialism. That when I look at what's happening now, so if you have time, look at the map showing the telegraph cables that connected Africa and empire. Then look at the transatlantic slave trade routes. And then look at the undersea cables connecting Africa and empire today. And it looks like you're looking at the same picture. So my pessimism is really born from the fact that what I'm seeing today is digital colonialism. The same thing, rubber and gold flowed from what was called the Belgian Congo, now the DRC, to Belgium. Today, we are seeing cobalt from the DRC, lithium from Zimbabwe, mines from Kenya flowing again, giving value where? To Silicon Valley, to Shenzhen in China, and here. Because if your university is making an AI tool, trust me, there is exploitation happening in the global majority. So this is where my pessimism is really born, because I've seen this story play over and over again. So, of course, the conclusion is what exactly she said, that it is up to us, it is incumbent upon us to stand and say, no, this ends here. We cannot let this cycle of colonialism come in just now wearing a different face, just because now there are no soldiers. Well, I mean, there is the Wagner group is still there in Africa, so they are soldiers. So we need to stand up and say enough is enough. Before we use this technology, this AI, before we champion it, first let's see the colonialism hidden inside the code.
I think it was really striking in Kenya, seeing, for example, so basically in Kenya they have these training centers where they bring people from the informal settlements, from the slums essentially, and they specifically want to hire and recruit people who are from those areas. They don't want to hire people from richer or more affluent neighborhoods in Nairobi. Why would that be, I wonder? I think probably because those people those people are more vulnerable, right? They need the jobs more. And so therefore, maybe they won't unionize. So that was this very cynical campaign, which the companies from San Francisco said was poverty alleviation, lifting people out of poverty. But then what they did was they then put them into these sort of incredibly difficult conditions where they're working 12 hours a day and being traumatized all day, every day, with no rights, being paid very little. And then as soon as they tried to complain or ask for a therapist, or maybe even tried to start a union, because a bunch of the workers did try to start a union, they were just laid off. And then they just hired more kids. And when we went to Kibera, there's this railway line that runs all the way through this informal settlement, which was built during the British colonial era. And it was this right next to where this training center was, and that was so striking to me. And we met a young kid there, maybe he was in his 20s, and he said, every Gen Z kid that you see, every other kid that you see has worked for one of these companies. They work for TikTok, they work for Instagram, they work for OpenAI. And it was so striking, and I think that idea that it is this colonial, that tech is colonial is something that maybe we haven't thought about. I don't know what you think about it, Carissa, how you've been thinking about it.
I completely agree. And maybe two more cents to add to that idea. First, when I used to think, as a teenager of British colonialism in India, I used to imagine the government colonizing India, but it wasn't the government. It was the East India Company who had more boots on the ground, more soldiers, than the whole British government. And so we need to be careful with these very powerful companies, because they can be just as scary and just as vicious as any government imaginable. The second idea is, in the 19th century, if you wanted to colonize another country, you had to take soldiers and physically colonize the land. What do you do if you want to colonize today? You turn the analog into the digital. That's the way to colonize. And that's not a neutral act. You know, we get sold this idea that technology is neutral, but like, you know, you said it's not neutral. And the very act of collecting data, even that language is very misleading. Because these companies are not collecting data. That seems to suggest that data is out there, like berries in the forest that you collect. No, no, no. When you collect data, it means that you created the data. You made something that wasn't trackable into something trackable, searchable, taggable. And what is it to track if it's not to surveil? And we're social beings. What do we want to track? Other human beings. And so this colonization of the analog is what is giving these companies such incredible power. And that's why every new app that you get, every new object, it seems like it's designed to be useful to you, but it's not. It's designed to collect data from you, and it gives you a carrot. Google Maps, the carrot is that, yes, it's useful, but it's designed to collect your location data. We could have just as useful a Google Maps collecting 20% of our data instead of everybody's data all the time. And that's just to amass power.
I wanted to open it up to questions, if anyone's got any questions. A few, yes, okay. Just over here.
Hi, thank you so much. 2 questions. The first might be really naive. Algorithms, there was an experiment done recently on LinkedIn, and 2 women and 2 men posted exactly the same things. And there was a concern that women's posts were being buried and the men's were getting elevated. And then there was this whole discussion about it, and then I thought, do people actually get in touch with the CEO of LinkedIn and go, what the hell? But there's the discussion made me think, people aren't doing that. So that's one question. Can you talk to the CEOs and go, WTF, you know, is this real? And how do you verify if it's real? And then the other question is, as we sit here, all our friends and cousins and relatives in America are about to head out on the No King's Day March. And I'm a bit anxious. There was sort of 2 sorts of advice about how to protect themselves. One was keep your phone with you and just film everything. And the other was, I'm really curious what you have to say, Carissa in particular, I think. No, take your earbuds out because they're tracking where you are. Turn your phone off because that's going to give you a way they can use that data later. Your smartphones, take them off, leave them at home. So, and the other, yeah, so those two sides of this whole thing that's going to play out today in America. Thanks.
Yeah, that's very concerning. So I think the most precise advice is to take a burner phone. Because if you don't have a phone and you get arrested and you get lost from your group, you can't call them. But if you have your phone, that is a spy in your pocket, like literally. It identifies you, it can record you. So the more precise is to have a burner phone. And the question about LinkedIn, yeah. I mean, and it's not only LinkedIn. Everything you do is being filtered more and more by algorithms, right? Like if you're using a dating app, if you're applying for a job, if you're applying for a loan, if you're applying for an apartment, everything is being filtered by algorithms. No, there's no way to contact the CEO. There's no accountability. And instead of using criteria of justice, like, 20 years ago, you went to the bank and there were a few things that you needed to get a loan, X amount of money and X amount of salary. And then if you didn't have it, you knew what you had to do to get it. But now it's all being filtered by algorithms that are just statistical analyses following correlations. And it's completely against any principle of justice, any principle of rule of law or of due process. You cannot appeal it. It's just we're creating a Kafkaesque world.
Thank you. You want to ask a question? Yeah, go on.
Sorry, it's directly, I hate to do it again, I did it in the last session, but Carissa, I have a question for you. The problem that I have with everything that you say is that it leaves me not knowing what to do. What am I supposed to do with this information? Okay, I feel shamed, but I'm not going to give up my Uber and my DoorDash and my Google Maps, and most of the people will not do it either. So, what do we do with this very eloquent argument? It feels like it's taking away agency.
So the very short answer, and it's a bit of a cop-out, is I have a whole chapter on it, on privacy is power. The more long answer is you try your best, and trying your best doesn't mean creating a nightmare for yourself. Signal works just as well as WhatsApp. ProtonMail just works just as well as Google. DuckDuckGo or Start page works just as well as Google search. So that's just starters. That's just easy. Then, a paper book, it matters. People seem to think that to change things, you have to be perfect, and everybody has to do it the same way. But no, actually, when you look at history, as long as about 5 to 10% of people change some of their behavior some of the time, companies listen. Because privacy is starting to be a competitive advantage. And Proton, full disclosure, I'm part of the board, but because I believe in it, is really interesting because it's a company that is doing really, really well. It turns out that people want privacy, and they're willing to pay for it. And so it's just little things. Do you want to have a really good party? Ask your friends not to upload photos. That's not hard. There are like many very small things that you can do. And then it depends on who you are. Are you a journalist, an investigative journalist in an authoritarian country? Well, then you have to do more things. But it's just about making a small effort. It's not about completely changing your life. It's about cherishing the analog. Just kind of appreciating it more, looking for opportunities where you can make a difference.
Adio, I think you had something to add.
Yeah, I wanted to say that when we are watching movies, we all see this sign, right, saying no animal was harmed in the production of this movie. Why can't we have the same with our AI? That no human beings were harmed in the production of this particular AI software. We all have seen or heard campaigns against blood diamonds. Why can't we lead or support similar efforts to offer mental health support for the workers who filter our filth from social media or from the different AI tools? So that's something I think we can do. Here, particularly in the global north or the global minority, we have more power than people in the global majority to influence our elected officials. Why are we not influencing them so that when they vote, when they set in policies and laws, they are more friendly towards the people who work underneath these systems? Those are things we can do. We can influence our politicians. Also, we can simply refuse to pay for some of these services. I think already as explained, I don't want to belabor the point.
Maybe one more thing.
Oh yeah, go on, let's have a closing.
I find it more and more like an act of like defiance to read a book. When I'm reading a book, nobody can touch me. There's no notifications. I'm outside of the reach of algorithms. I'm having a conversation with the author. I'm thinking about important things. It's really more and more in this digital age, an act of being rebellious and defiant of everything digital. And then finally, democracy is a conversation. So just everybody who's here, thank you for being here. Thank you for having this conversation. Because the moment we externalize the conversation to the large language models, we stand up and leave the table of democracy, because democracy is a conversation, and if we leave it to the chatbots, then we just, we just give up our seat. So thank you for being here, for having this chat.
Thank you.